And joining me now is Iran Sanchez, the host of Journalistically Speaking. He's joining me from Moscow. Rick, really appreciate your time. You have previously called Donald Trump's tariff policies on countries like India for buying Russian oil as disrespectful and ignorant. Does the same apply to his new 25% tariffs on nations trading with Iran? And how effective do you think this will be in isolating Tehran amidst its economic crisis?
Oh, I think it's obviously an action by the United States to try and create conditions in Iran so that they can then, at the behest of Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli government, bomb Iran. This is really nothing new. A child could figure this out. It's part of the what they often call regime change operation that the West has deployed on many occasions. One of the reasons we recently saw the currency increase by 40% in Iran was because the Western influences wanted to create that condition so that they would have protests in Iran. And then they infiltrated the protesters and made it look like the people of Iran hated their government. So then they could say, oh, look, now we have to go in there and attack Iran and bomb Iran, as John McCain once said, historically speaking. So yes, the short answer to your question is that they're going to do everything possible, either through hook or by crook, to make sure they create those very difficult conditions for Iran. And it's worse for Iran than it was for India, because when it comes to Iran, of course, it's not being done. It's being done at the behest of not only the United States, but Israel, which is probably the most powerful country in the planet. When it comes to India, because Israel does not have a specific beef with India, then it was more possible for the Indians to resist and for the United States to beg off, so to speak.
And how are these developments being viewed where you are in Moscow by Kremlin?
I don't think Donald Trump is being taken as seriously as he was before when it comes to tariffs in particular, for two reasons. Because he's moved on to the Maduro affair, and now the bombing, or the so-called prepared or any day now kind of bombing of Iran, the grabbing or taking away of Greenland. So those three things that he's doing have superseded much of the conversation about tariffs, where everyone was looking at Donald Trump and associating him with tariffs. They're now associating him with things that are, some people would argue, much worse. And at the same time, he's having very serious problems in his own country. The protests that you are, I think, showing of what's happening in Iran,
yes,
is actually the actual citizen protests in Iran are nothing compared to the citizen protests that are taking place right now in the United States, where you have ICE agents, the people are calling them thugs, wearing masks in full uniform, looking like special forces, going into communities and looking for anybody who looks like they have particular brown skin and removing them from the streets. It's causing riots, it's causing protests, it's causing anger. People are dying, people are being killed, and it's driven Donald Trump's approval numbers down to between 38 and 40%. That means he's now close to Biden numbers in terms of disapproval, which, interestingly enough, might be another reason why you see the United States trying to show its muscle around the world with tariffs, with threats of intervention.
You know, we are speaking at a time when the protests in Iran are only escalating and the number of those who have been killed is only rising. The US president has tweeted that help is on the way and that this pressure by the protesters should continue. My question then would be that, are you seeing this more of a haphazard pressure that strengthens hardliners, or is this a, a, perhaps an economic lever to support regime change from within?
Of course, yes, 100%. This is a color revolution. Let me tell you something, and I hope your viewers get a chance to look this up. Just Google it if you get a chance. Look at what Mike Pompeo, the former CIA director of the United States of America, Donald Trump, recently tweeted. He said essentially, Happy New Year, and I'm quoting him a little off here, but it's close enough. Congratulations to the protesters in Iran, along with the Mossad agents with them. Listen to what I just said. The former CIA director of the United States is confirming, he's saying the quiet part out loud, that Mossad has infiltrated the protesters and have created these protests. And those infiltrators, according to sources in Iran, are the ones who have been shooting 100 police officers and killing them, and also killing innocent people to make it look like there's this mass protests in Iran. You know, the same thing they did in Ukraine in 2014, the same thing that they have done in Venezuela. You know, my country, which I adore and love for my great people and my great Constitution and all the wonderful things about America, it is, as you said just a moment ago, or alluded to, led by people who are globalists, who are money-hungry warriors, who make money from wars and who make money from these interventions, and they control the U.S. president, they control the Congress, and they control, in many ways, the Senate. And more often than not, when it's not being controlled by the war machine, as we've kind of come to know it, the administrative state, it's controlled by Zionists and more particularly by Israel. So it's kind of a hell of a thing where if you live in America, you elect people to be your leaders, but they're not really the ones who are in charge. The ones who are in charge are above them, and they're unelected.
Okay. My last question, given your experience, Rick, in covering U.S. foreign policy flip-flops, what risks does this pose for global energy markets, especially with China's role as Iran's top oil buyer potentially facing U.S. retaliation, and also what we are seeing in the context of India-Russia?
There's no question that that can become a very large problem. The only reason the United States kidnapped the president of Venezuela, which of course anybody who knows anything about international law knows that they had no right to do that, even if it turns out that Maduro is a drug dealer, which he's not, but even if it turned out that he is trafficking in drugs, you still can't do it. It's not one country's job to go in and do law enforcement for another country.
That's right.
Once we start going down that route, my God, where does that finish, right? But the reason the United States did that is because Venezuela has more crude oil reserves than any country on the planet. And the United States has more refineries that can refine that type of crude than any country in the world. Unfortunately, those refineries are not being used. By getting that crude from Venezuela, the United States would boost its ability to produce, and it would be probably the biggest oil producer in the entire world. That would be something that's the reason it's doing what it's doing with Venezuela. It does put China in a precarious situation. And I think what this does, it hastens then the need for China to hurry up and install Siberia 2 so it can get more of its direct oil from Russia, just as India is and will continue to do. And that triad of India, China, and Russia will continue to grow and become more powerful, and in essence be the only force, if you will,
Okay.
that will kind of stand up to what the Americans and what Mr. Trump is trying to do to monopolize the global energy supply. And that's just when it comes to oil, of course.
That's right.
We're not talking about all hydrocarbons because natural gas becomes a whole different situation. But I do think that We don't know what's going to happen yet. The push by Mr. Trump to try and get American energy companies to go in, Exxon, for example, the biggest of them all, to try and go into Venezuela and start taking the oil out of Venezuela and putting it into the system. And Exxon is saying, no, we don't want to do that just yet. There's a problem for Mr. Trump in that there's a little bit of a lack of level of trust, even amongst his own constituents, to see this thing through. So I can't give you a straight answer as to whether this is going to reset the limits for global oil, but it has the potential to.
Rick, and we have just entered 2026 and we are already looking at turbulence all over. We'll continue to have this conversation. Rick Sanchez, really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity.